even though we have 9 seconds. Don't know if we're going.
9 seconds!
We're about to go live, but in fact we actually are. And I'm just going to say, hey, go live. I think we're all live. Okay, so we're just going to say we're going. Here we go, opening scroll. Yep.
Very Dad Ideas is a live streaming show with 2 dads, a voice actor, and an animator, who put the kids to bed and get permission from their wives to dick around on their expensive computers. They have been known to say things like Jake Kong Jr., Eddie Spencer Jr., Tracy the Gorilla, Belfry, Ghost Buggy, Man-at-Arms, He-Man, Skeletor, Evil Limb, Marshall Bravestar, 3030, Handlebar, Tex Hex, Mayor Derringer, Jock Blackstar, and Burble. Yeah. Yeah, all characters from Filmmation cartoons. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Darren Jennings. I got to say, Very Dead Ideas is the show that exists for one reason and one reason only. That's because production costs are incredibly low. You're welcome. And I mean, how low? We're talking like Lou Scheimer under the guise Eric Gunder when he used to voice characters on the Quicken slide for some of those Filmation
And now
cartoons.
our audience has no idea what you're talking about.
No idea what they're talking about. I'm going to kick it over to Nye Warburton. Nye, you have this giant turkey, which I have bumbled.
Tonight's episode is about Filmation, and what Darren is going through all about is about the history and about the fine sort of points of this wonderful animation studio that the two of us grew up with when we were kids. This is a studio,
still grips a very large portion of our brains.
I mean, it's really a large portion of our brains. So we're discussing about the studio,
weighs me down.
Not only the content, but also how they make it. I mean, you did some research, right? Like,
I did some research.
At least on the toilet, you were like, meh.
Yeah. I get 7 or 8 minutes in the morning to take a dump, and I was just like, Alan Oppenheimer, oh no.
Well, yeah, excellent. We gave your meh-ing some direction this week to like focus on of what we're gonna.
How about you? Did you get just tons of time to peel yourself away to do an exhaustive amount of research on Filmation?
Oh, I mean, I had at least 8 hours a day to focus on this task.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
no chance at all.
You just manifest what you want. You just ask the universe for time, and there it is. Boom.
Luckily, I had 5 minutes in between like meetings and crap at work to like go on Wikipedia and be like, let me.
That's right. You had some good interviews and stuff. That's good.
Yeah.
I went to new agencies, and agencies are changing where they're located. It was a crazy work week here in the Bay Area. I know SoCal down there. You guys probably didn't get any rain either. We haven't gotten any rain.
We've got a bunch of rain down here, actually.
You've got a bunch of rain?
Yeah.
Get up here.
So before we get into our Filmation episode, do you have any dad advice for us this week?
I do have just a tiny little piece of dad advice.
Let's just do a tiny little piece, and of course we got to do our open, which is really the only reason why I want to do.
Yeah, but you're damn right. Let's have some of that sweet. That's the old school. There they were. All right,
Dad advice. What do you got for us, D?
For today's dad advice. Dad Advice is brought to you by completely unwarranted dads who know better than you do, and even though you never asked for their advice, they give you their advice. So, my dad advice this week is, kid's turning 6 in about a month, and he has recently discovered this game thing called Beyblade.
All right.
Beyblade is basically tops. It's like a top. You know what a top is?
Yeah, for sure.
Spin the top, and anyway, these are not, they're not even expensive, but so like he's just obsessed with Beyblades, and so we had a big long talk because they're allowed to bring these things to school. And like, because he goes to aftercare and he plays with a group of friends. And they play Beyblades, and we had a big long talk, and it was like, so when are you going to use these Beyblades? When are you not going to use these Beyblades? And,
Right.
he's not going to use them when they're lining up, and they're not going to use them. He's not going to play them at lunch. It's only like, when they tell him that he can play with them, and when he tells him to put them away, he has to put them away. And we go through a whole thing. Kid passes with flying colors. I'm just impressed by how well he takes in, takes in information, processes it, and goes out into the world and does these things. The very same day he comes back and he's gotten the Beyblade taken away from him because he's just playing with it whenever he wants to. So my dad advice is, remember all this good stuff that you're giving your kids, all this information and all these like ways of being and all this stuff
is being completely forgotten.
It's still being filtered through a 5-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old. So patience is the name of it.
Or a 2-year-old. So you should just expect that anytime you're going to like instruct your child, that
and then give yourself a nice pat on the back about how you got it. You just know what you're doing.
So maybe the dad advice is like, don't pat yourself on the back because you really have no clue what.
Wait for it. Yeah, it should just be ... Wait for it. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into our main segment about Filmmation. We got a bunch of stuff we're going to go into tonight. And so I was going to try to make an open, but I have 2 kids.
Can we just take a minute to acknowledge that you have Captain Kirk and Spock?
At least that, and you have She-Ra.
And I have She-Ra. I have sword to Rabbit. She would change her sword into like just like a rope or basically she had the sword that had the power to be Jan and the other fucker from Super Friends. Like her sword was like she could change it into stuff. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So one of the notes we got back from Jen, who is like one of our only watchers, is that like we go way to nerd so fast that she can't get there. And so what happened is you went like from Filmmation to She-Ra in like a second and a half. And I think what we need to do tonight is get from the start to She-Ra. Then everybody can completely enjoy and how nerdy. Well, let's really do the start
then, because Filmmation started right with Batman and Robin.
Actually, so I have some history here.
Yeah.
So let's start with that. This is the classic history. In fact, I actually prepared for this a little bit.
Oh, all right. There we go. Oh, look at those guys.
I know. Yeah, this is like the kind of black and white photo you expect to see about history. So. So the 3 guys, the guy on the left is Norm Prescott, and the guy on the right is Lou Scheimer, and then the guy in the middle is Hal Sutherland. And so Lou and Hal started by doing the Bozo and Popeye cartoons. And this guy Norm Prescott, I think, is just like an awesome salesman. I mean, he's got a pipe, right? Like, he's got something here. I mean, of course, he's an awesome. So what happened was this guy Prescott started getting bigger gigs, like so there was
a Robert Preston vibe to him.
Like Pinocchio in Space was one that he worked.
Yeah, they got all these crazy sequels.
Right, or the Oz and the Journey to Oz. So none of them work.
And the sequel to Cinderella,
So none of them work, and they all fall apart. And then they're like, well, you know what? Fuck the movies. Why don't we try TV? And so they started making commercials for TV, and then they were able to very early land like Flash Gordon and Star Trek, and then they wound up doing a number of cartoons like Fat Albert, He-Man,
and Batman and Robin with Burt Ward and Adam West.
That's right. And they did the Super Friends. They did the Super Friends too, and all that stuff.
Well, they did. They did one where they had they had a crew of sort of like. Universal like monsters, and they were like the Ghoulie crew or the Ghoulie gang. Oh, wow. And they actually even had a team up with Looney Tunes. They were terrible cartoons, but there were crossovers.
They had a team up with, and they worked with like other. Yeah, I mean there was a Superman cartoon too, and there was a whole bunch of other stuff. So
they were big into rotoscoping.
Yeah, so I've got a few notes on Filmation that I want to get into, but like you've also brought some stuff to the table. Like, why don't we talk about like why? I mean, there's so much to talk about here, but why do you think that they were a big deal to us?
The easy question to get out of the way first is that I was 10. It was like 1983.
Right, is that moving things in front of your face?
Oh
right?
my God! And they were animated, and it was fantastic. For me, it really was. I think He-Man. It was just this guy running around in a viper.
But did you watch Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, or did you watch?
I absolutely did. I absolutely did watch Fat Albert, and I think that's really where they kind of germinated that whole idea of having sort of a moral at the end of the cartoon.
Yeah, that was all. A lot of that was Filmation, and then the GI Joe whatever guys ripped that stuff off. But
you did.
But yeah, I mean, like, what is it that did you bring anything specific you wanted to chat about? Or do
for me it was that they when I actually came to the cartoon as I had some He-Man action figures, and I actually read the comics, and I know that you recently got a chance to watch the Netflix that I've been after you
toys and the toys that made us.
The toys that made us on Netflix. Yeah. It's a 4-parter, but they talk about it was in a sales pitch to Child World,
right?
That the people were trying to ask for like more stuff, or like what was going to set this apart, or how are kids going to get to know about this, and the salesman just sort of pulled out of his butt that there were going to be comic books in the back of the He-Man action figures. Right. I read the comic books. I mean, I was a little bit older.
But they were very much like, they were based on Conan the Barbarian.
They were based on Conan the Barbarian.
So wait, let's back up. What was the name of this toy company again? Was this this wasn't Hasbro, was it? This was, who did He-Man?
That's a good one. See, I should have known
that. But we gotta come prepared.
That's a Google ability right there.
Yeah, let's go to the internet.
To the internet. So they the comic was goof. The comic book, they were saying, these toys are for 5-year-olds. Kids who are 5 don't read. What else you got?
Right.
And before they lost the whole thing, the guy pulls out, well, there's going to be 2 animated 1-hour specials. They took their budget and chopped it around. They went to Filmation. Filmation was like, for the amount of money that it would cost you for 2 1-hour specials, you get a whole series.
Yeah.
Going for it.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about He-Man and Filmation is it was one of the first where the toy was first, right? The toy came was first, and then the cartoon happen. So the thing about Filmation that I find is really interesting, and this kind of happens, is that like they embraced economy. They put story in it over quality. In fact, they were shit on a lot for being like a shitty animation studio, and they kind of were. But they pumped out so much content, and it was kind of the Hanna-Barbera style of like, hey, let's just create a whole bunch of characters and kind of create a format that we can generate a lot of content, as opposed to like, hey, let me make it look beautiful, which is what Disney and Warner Brothers were doing beforehand. They were making cartoons that were 24 frames per second, and they had to do all this work. These guys were reusing stuff, and they were making it really fast, and that's a really interesting way to make cartoons. In fact, they kind of made like that Saturday morning, super shitty, let me just pump out this stuff style.
Well, they sort of had a way of they would reuse their rotoscoped images over and over, and they would take pieces of them, and they would give you just enough pieces of them, like at a time, like a few seconds, so that your eye would sort of not linger on what you'd already seen a bunch of different times.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that the show would they would only do like anything they could do to try to get something. So, for example, like, I'm trying to think and draw at the same time. They would do establishing shots where they would make this long plane, and they would create like an alien world or Eternia or something like that, and then they would just move the camera along it like this, really, really slowly, and that would give them like 10, 20 seconds worth of material, you could use
Right.
like a voiceover. They also did this awful lot where they would like put the character in the side, like really, really big, and he would look to the side, and they would just flap his mouth, and then the other characters would just be standing here. They would do this for like a third of the episode. You know, they were really crawling through this. And then you're absolutely right. What they were also doing was they would do the rotoscope 24 frames per second. Like He-Man would be like, I'm going to stop Skeletor. And then they would cut to him like running across the screen.
Right.
They did
Right.
they did
And
this.
then he would be running, but you would see him running over the camera, you know.
Oh yeah. He would like, run up and it was like pre-canned stuff, but they totally did that. In Fat Albert, in Star Trek, in She-Ra, in Flash Gordon. I mean, it was like the house style. You know, hey, the way that we keep the budgets down is by
by using these pieces that we've made.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean,
it's
all
very interesting.
houses do it. You can see just the cycle of animation for a character walking is arguably you're using the same, right?
Over and over again. I mean, and in fact, they got hammered because they didn't even animate that part. It was pretty much like they would just shoot, I guess, film at that time, but film, and then they would rotoscope over the top of it. They weren't even like figuring out the animation.
Analog mocap. They were just
exactly. But the what's his name? Lou was so Norm was kind of like this producer. I think he was like the salesman.
Yeah.
Lou was really interesting because he did everything. He animated, he did layout, he did voices. He did voices. Yeah. And did you find out
usually under a guise, under like Eric or Eric Garner.
He did music too. He did music under, and part of the reason was not because he was like so talented or whatever. It was because the unions or whatever would only let an actor do 3 voices per episode. So he wound up doing other episodes.
Yeah, he wound up. It was like they had. Well, this sort of goes into some of the, because I really wanted to talk about the voice actors who voiced the majority of He-Man, which was Alan Oppenheimer, John Irwin, and Linda Gary.
Okay.
So those were your core He-Man like voice actors.
Right.
Like Alan Oppenheimer was Skeletor, and he was also Man at Arms.
Okay.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And like.
That's like
still alive. He still works today. Like
that's most of the show. Like you must just get the whole script and be like, okay, well, I gotta do this part of the show.
It's me talking to John, and it's me talking to Linda. Like Linda was Tila, and just like pretty much, covered the gambit of the women in there. And so whenever you had some stray voices, old Lou would step in there.
Yeah. Usually
under a guise, like I said. But I mean, I think. Like that's why they did it. They did it the same reason why Mel Blanc was all of the voices for Looney Tunes. They just, it's cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be really interesting to be like, so, I mean, it's He-Man, so there's this kind of like, whatever, right? Especially at the time. But at the same point, it's like you're getting a paying gig, and you're like really involved in all of these characters and all of these shows. So you must feel like part of the whole creative like flow, Well,
and when you IMDb John Irwin was He-Man, and he was Beast Man, he was Ram Man. Well, like I said, like you were just saying, that's like you take Alan Oppenheimer, he's got Man at Arms and Skeletor, and then Irwin's got those 3. That's basically most of the episodes.
Right.
Like I'd look up Orko, but it also sort of makes me mad because Orko was the problem I had when I like started watching He-Man in '83. Is I was reading these comic books that were. I'd just gotten done watching Conan the Barbarian, and I was looking for the Riddle of Steel in my cartoon. And not only did He-Man not like cut anybody up with a battle axe, but at the end of the episode, like he was talking about like the right and wrong way to do stuff.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about story.
Yeah,
like how they sort of stress story over, sort of razzmatazz.
Well, they had this running narrative that they had to constantly do. Yeah.
Well, they did like sort of edgy cartoons for the time. There was 2 that sort of come to mind that I remember. One of them was He-Man, and the other one was Brave Star. But in He-Man, Skeletor tricks He-Man in an episode called "The Problem with Power."
Wow, you know
And
the names. That's amazing,
yeah,
my friend.
he tricked He-Man and made him think that he had killed an innocent bystander, um, in an episode. And so He-Man literally like walks into Castle Grayskull and throws the sword into the the moat or whatever it is, and
It says, I don't have the power. I don't want to do this
yeah,
anymore.
I don't have the power.
I don't have the power.
So can you imagine like the catharsis that comes at the end of that episode where he actually finds out he didn't kill anybody? I mean, for the most part, he's just literally running around in a fur diaper with the camera running between his legs while he runs over it and runs to trouble and knocks it out,
So you're saying it's really hard to be He-Man. I mean, it's a hard life if you're He-Man.
It's a hard life for He-Man, but I mean, you would never have an episode like that. You don't kill anybody.
So I mean, I do want to recommend to anybody who is to the 5 people who will watch this.
6. I think there's 6.
Okay, great. We have one more. Great.
Is there anybody over there saying anything messages wise?
No, I mean, Lisa joined while she was like, having dinner. But it's okay. It's okay.
What'd you guys make for dinner?
Oh, like some sort of Trader Joe's heat up and potato and beans things. I was going to say that the Toys That Made Us was very interesting, especially if like this kind of subject matter of the Filmation and the tie-in with the He-Man stuff is because I think the whole
if it doesn't, you're not watching.
If
that
watching,
doesn't,
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, the Filmation stuff that we're talking about right now with like the economy of shots, how do we pump out a lot of material? Let's make deals with the movies. Let's go to the TV. Let's do whatever. Like all that kind of like sort of production thinking mindset is what goes on in that toy documentary about how, okay, well, let's do the market analysis, and it says that the kids want the power, so let's make a character that has the power.
Literally just screams it.
And we wanted Conan, but he's not big. Well, you know what? Screw it. We're going to make it like 900 times the size, and everybody in this universe is going to be that. And I just found
huge and ripped.
I found that interplay between like the corporate like decision of what we're going to do and the creative that tension was really, really interesting. It's just very, very cool. Super fun.
Oh yeah, Alan Oppenheimer was Cringer and Battle Cat too. So like right there, like there's everybody in He-Man.
So you said that what's her name went on to be She-Ra,
Linda Gary.
Linda Gary, right? So she was She-Ra as well.
No, Linda Gary was not She-Ra. She-Ra was voiced by Melanie Britt.
I don't know.
Melanie Britt is like a Linda Gary. Linda Gary died in 1995. But if you look at Linda Gary's like the amount of work that she did, she was on everything. Like she was on.
Was that like the heyday for cartoon voice actors? Like that time, you think?
I bet you the 80s through the 90s was the heyday. I mean, like you had people like Linda Gary was Tila. She was Aunt May in the 94 to 97 Spider-Man cartoon that was probably one of the most popular sort of runs.
Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
No, not that one. Not 94 to 97 was not that.
That show was amazing. I mean, that was a great cartoon.
I actually heard that in Spider-Man Homecoming 2 or whatever, the sequel, that they're going to put Firestar in that thing. Firestar was made for that cartoon.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, no,
but she was in the 92-94 Batman run. She was in a King's Quest game. She was in friggin' DuckTales. Like she was in.
She worked. That's like a worker.
Yes, I mean she worked. If you look at her IMDb page, she has stuff coming out for 2 years after she died.
Yeah.
That's how much stuff. She was just a person who was prolific in her work.
Yeah.
But no, She-Ra, the Princess of Power, who is currently above my head, and she's just so lovely. But her sword blew. She
had like a gem in it or something.
Yeah, they needed to give her like something better than what she got. But she was in everything. I mean, she was in like if you go back, she was in episodes of Mannix, like a bunch of episodes of Mannix. She was in Taxi.
Yeah.
She was in.
Well, we have to find some of these. We'll have to find some of these like lost voices that we can do.
She was recently. She's in like her and Alan Oppenheimer both in like the Fallout 4 video game. Oppenheimer was in Fallout Tactics in like the late 90s. Like they've and she's been on camera. She's on like The Young and the Restless, and like these are people who have worked and work.
That's awesome. Well, we're coming up on almost half an hour for our first segment. We kind of got a little off Filmation, but I think that it was we dug down deep. We got to the important stuff pretty quick. And then those who are interested, go and look up in Filmation. Hopefully, you know how to get to She-Ra from from where we were before.
Well, she was Filmation. She was like she wasn't the last cartoon that Filmation put out. Brave Star was the last cartoon they put out. I think that
was the last one for sure. Well, okay, Darren, we got to call your friend up here.
Oh my God!
We're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back, and Darren. Darren actually played some Dungeons and Dragons, so we're gonna do a live draw where Darren's gonna tell us about Dungeons and Dragons. So stay right back. We'll be right back.
Swing it on back.
Welcome back. Let me make sure the audio is up.
We're trying to figure out what we want to do for the live draw.
Yeah, so we'll just go right
here. He's finally seen The Last Jedi, and I'm sort of trying to get him to draw his impression of what that meant to him, seeing the 8th movie in what is being called now the Skywalker Saga.
Oh, dude, I don't follow it that deeply. I will say one thing that I really liked, and that was I got to see this guy. It was Yoda. That was
and it was Puppet Yoda.
It was Puppet Yoda. So I do want to say there's one thing that's absolutely amazing is that you can put the Millennium Falcon on the screen and have it go by camera in like a trench or a cavern, and then have a TIE fighter chased after it and shoot at, and it will evoke some sort of emotional primal response from me where I want to like cry and be thankful that I am such a Star Wars fan. But then I'm reminded of the garbage that's surrounding this moment and how this moment has been used to tug at my heartstrings.
Yeah.
It's the problem.
And how ultimately Disney has bought the rights to like the real protagonist of these Star Wars movies is the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
Are you figuring that out now? The Millennium Falcon never has to die. It never has to get old. It never has to get too old to read the lines. It will never get its hip crushed when they smash the Millennium Falcon onto the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
Like they can keep it running. I mean, I'm surprised that like not only did Rey get like Luke's lightsaber and Han's Millennium Falcon, but like Chewie's bowcaster, and she should just have all of the things.
Yeah, I will
But she did get the
also
Wookiee. She got to keep the dog too.
I will also say, well, like, what a disastrous thing that when you decide to make a new movie and you cast a bad guy, there is no way anybody in the universe can be cooler than Darth Vader. And you're setting this guy up to fail. And I'm sure he's a great actor, and I'm sure he's a scary guy. But come on, man! Like there's once you've passed Darth Vader, there's no way another bad guy. So I kind of was like, I appreciate your effort. I think that the storyline is cohesive enough. It's great to see the things that I love to see again. I love seeing Carrie Fisher, but I have no. I'm not taking anything with me here. It's just sort of a functional watch is what I did. So.
I have to say I did enjoy it. I enjoy the character of Rey. I enjoy Kylo Ren. I think I'm having sort of a good time watching how they're sort of reinventing these things. I feel like there's sort of red. They could have done something better with Captain Phasma instead of just sort of retconning her into sort of another Boba Fett, where they just sort of show up, they look pretty sweet for a couple of minutes, and then they just get whacked out for no real reasons.
Or the Emperor too. That guy was just like, oh, he's the ultimate bad guy. He's the ultimate
No, he just gets my feelings were I was relieved because I hated his fucking name, and I was just like this dude who just shows up and is just pushing everybody around with this sort of weird, sort of melty face, and I don't know. And again, it's like Andy Serkis, and I know that he's the only guy that we want to see mocapped facially on movies where there are monstrous people, I guess.
So Darren, I know this is the most important thing to you is what I thought about Star Wars, but I want to know the most important thing that's to me is you got to tell me about Dungeons and Dragons. You have to tell me about how that went. What is that like as a 40-something-year-old man to be playing Dungeons and Dragons once again?
44 years old. Like most people, like the last thing they're trying to figure out is a way to get into Dungeons and Dragons. Through a couple of friends, I found this gaming group, and they're sort of on the island here in the Great Island of Alameda, Northern California, and they game every other Thursday. And I went and met with the guy who's the DM. He's awesome, and they don't play D&D. They play Pathfinder, which is sort of, I think it's like Dungeons and Dragons, like the 5th edition, but something got messed up with sort of the licensing, so it's called Pathfinder now. And
but it's Dungeons and Dragons, right?
It's Dungeons and Dragons. The numbers are a little bit different because I sort of stepped out around Advanced Dungeons and Dragons 2nd edition, sort of in the 80s and the 90s.
For all of our D&D players out there.
Yeah, all of my D&D stuff where I had a +1 sword that would also, chosen command, burst into flame and light your way down a murky corridor. Like, there's all of the stuff is sort of been keyed and sort of toyed with, and sort of that stuff's been honed. But what I love about it is that you really are just sort of in charge of a shared story.
Oh, that's cool.
You can sort of sit down and play games. Like there's many different ways to role play, right? Even just playing a computer game or a video game or something. Like with this, there's something that's just so sort of pure because you really are just sort of making a story in each other's heads and just sort of yes-anding it. Or what I think is kind of fun is like if your alignments or your sort of characters don't line up, that you can disagree and sort of get into a. And I mean.
Okay, so Darren, you just went straight up acting nerd on us there. Talk about what yes and is when you're talking about this. Okay, so you're having a story and you're interacting with other people. Yeah. And now you are all building on each other.
You're saying yes to what the other person's saying, and you're contributing to your.
Right. So it's like when you do like a story building or comedy or anything like that, it's basically like. You don't want to say, hey, there's an elephant on my head, and have the other guy go, no, you don't have that. Because that shuts
you don't want to do
down.
like the Michael Scarn from The Office, like and then just pull out like an imaginary gun and shoot everybody kind of thing.
Right.
Like You wanna take what people say and bring it in. Is that battle armor Skeletor that you're making there?
I was doing that. So what I'm doing is
Just a dent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What I was gonna do was this was San Francisco, and then this is the East Bay, and I put a giant dragon here because that's what I imagine what goes on when you're like playing Pathfinder or whatever.
That's exactly what happens, Nye.
Okay.
We live really close to Oakland Airport, and they make a special landing zone for dragons.
Great.
They fly a lot lower than planes because they're fucking dragons and they're looking for people to burn down. But it's been fun, dude. I'm playing. They needed somebody to take over a character, so I didn't get to roll a character with this thing. I'm playing like sort of a god race who has like she has metal hair.
Okay.
Yeah. And a big heavy mace, and she's the cleric. She's an oracle. I guess what she does is she heals, and then she can also sort of really fuck up undead, which is just like the same thing I remember about anybody who played a cleric. And
so yeah, I mean, isn't that what the cleric is about? He's kind of like so he hangs back, everyone goes forward, and then whenever there's like a time, you just go and you just heal these other guys so they have longer to go, right? Right. So
you give them back their hit points.
This is like RPG, not RPG.
Yeah.
This is like group play
Tabletop.
strategy.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of strategy that you do if you do this kind of stuff.
But this Pathfinder system has been blown up. Like, you when I say D&D and I say character classes to you, give me 4 character classes just off the top of your head.
You mean like fighter and wizard and elf and not elves are there's a race, right? Okay, so like barbarian,
magician and acrobat.
Right, exactly. Right. Which wasn't Filmation, but yes.
Yeah, no, I mean that's just another golden cartoon.
Yeah, that was a Dragons cartoon.
But so that's what you do. Like is you have those big pieces. You have fighter, you have magic user, you have cleric. But in this, they've sort of blown each one of those things up. So there's like you could be like 20 or 30 different kinds of fighter, 20 or 30 different kinds of cleric.
So it's like hyper detailed.
Yeah,
right?
like there's a Cthulian aspect to it. So like you have telekineticists, you have psychics and stuff like that.
So does your race have anything to do with it? I mean, like if you're like a golem or something, right? You're going to be.
It gives like my race, the race that my character is, gives her extra charisma. So she's gorgeous, and she's her race is Azamar.
Okay.
I'm sure that's going to do
something.
So
is the sort of emotional alignment, whether you're chaotic good or whatever, all that
she's
stuff?
Neutral good.
All that still exists in this.
Yeah, the alignments thing. I always come back to that because like that very quickly is like one of those things that you can sort of anchor, part of your character down with is once you know their alignment, because there's lawful, there's neutral, and there's chaotic, and then there's good and bad versions of that plus true neutral, right? Which maybe you knew somebody who tried to play the frustrating job of playing true neutral, which just seems like
so I mean what Darren is talking about, how do I call that up? That's like let's say chaotic good is probably because
chaotic good's like Robin Hood.
Don't they have these charts? Yeah, here's a chart. Okay, so this is a Game of Thrones chart of what Darren is talking about. Is that when you play a role-playing game and you're developing a character, I mean, you
pick an alignment.
For the non-nerds that are out there, you pick an alignment, and this basically gives you a way that your character can operate on a moment-to-moment basis, and like how you're supposed to be. And this is actually fairly accurate, I would think. This is pretty good, right? I don't know about that.
I mean, honestly, like the neutral things are, and actually, I don't hear that her lawful. I don't know. Is there like, but they have other ones with other characters. Like I think they do one with Star Wars people and.
Yeah. So this is probably better.
There you go.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, lawful good is Superman and chaotic evil is the Joker.
Yeah, that actually works on lawful evil and whatever. So I think that's a very interesting like way of defining characters. And so this pathfinding thing is not
Yeah.
it's not fully Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a derived version of it that has the characters that
It's a
has some
set.
of these.
It's up to and including a set of rules of D&D. I would say it probably shuts off somewhere in 2015 or 2016 because D&D there was some licensing.
Oh yeah, interesting.
Whatever.
Yeah,
So they brought it back under a different moniker.
I love this kind of crap about like building characters and divining stuff and whatever. And maybe like I told you one time
That was always one of my favorite things about playing D&D
is building the characters, right? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, even in some of the other games that you would play, like the first day you would get together, everyone would get their characters together, and it would like it would jumpstart the imagination. And so it's I think it's hugely important to like those kinds of games to be successful at all, you know.
Well, and I think if you're really trying to go, I mean, you know, there's got to be a lot of reasons why people play. I mean, one of them's got to be like there's a dungeon master who truly wants to trap and kill their people, you know.
Yeah, right.
But like, you know that's you know something. But you know, there's a lot of people who want to play just because they like rolling a bunch of different dice.
Yeah.
I think what's fun for me is that I feel like this is that shared story thing is something that you usually only get. Rehearsing a play or doing improv or doing improv rehearsal or something like that, and
right.
when you know as dads, right, we don't have a whole lot of time, so to be able to do that at all,
to mess around and have a story,
is super nice. It's a lot of fun.
Well, Darren, we didn't really do much of a live draw, but like, you know, hey, it was sort of a random free association of events that reflected the conversation, you know.
I really like your Yoda because I feel like I see his picture and I feel like you were happy to see him because he looks good.
Yeah,
you know, like he looks like he's fine with being. He was just like he takes kind of shows up, takes a big shit on the Jedi Order with Luke. You know, he's like, oh, you want to burn this?
And I like that relationship was still there. It was sort of whatever, but it was just kind of like, you know, I almost wanted him to say, you know, God willing, we'll all meet again in Spaceball 2, The Search for More Money, right? And that's kind of, which just shows the genius of Mel Brooks. So,
I know he's.
So that's the end of our second segment. You know, we did a little bit. Let's do a quick third segment where we talk about the future of the show. We're going to take a quick break, and we're
going to predict the future in the next 10 minutes. But first, we're going to take a small break. Listen to some Jen Remington, who is still over there at heydogwith2gs.com. She is providing us all the smoking tunes that you're listening to in between our little segments here today.
And really one of our only fans. So thank you, Jen.
But that's fine. You know, that's all we really need.
That's all we need. Just Jen. All right, we'll be right back. and welcome back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back, and we know the future.
So this is the last segment of our show where we talk about the future of the show. It's the meta.
Talk about all the horrible choices we've made and the terrible consequences.
Yeah,
that
and like, you know what? No one is in any of our rooms, but you're like, fuck it, dude. Like, first of all, I want to say that I really just love doing this. I think this is so fun to come on.
I really look forward to my Tuesday nights. I know Allie enjoys not having me sort of, I don't know, just bugging her with just my constant questions and things that I need to know from her.
But it's also, there's two things that I want to say about this, and then this just could be a big, like, you know, jerk off session, I guess.
Good. Right before Valentine's Day, you got to clean that up. That
Number one, there's so much shit in my life that's tied to something. There's like a paycheck or whatever, and like this is like just pure creativity without anything except like I just want to fucking do it, you know.
Right.
And the only other thing I had like that in my life was Nitune, and even that got tied up in like, oh god, I gotta post and I gotta whatever, and I like the fact that this is just enough work that we can hit it every week, and it's a good enough product that we could do it every week, but it's also kind of like just throw
it's fun, and there is a sort of bar, and we had to ramp up, and we've been this for a while. Not that we worked on it and it's good, but just that we worked on it and we've got it to here, which is, you know, like we have backgrounds and
and I think if we just show, I mean, it's really like Woody Allen, right? Like you just show up every week, and I would rather have like the guy who came in and chatted with us for a little, and then he follows on Twitch or whatever, and he might not watch another 9 episodes, but then he'll come back and he'll say something else.
Right.
I'd rather have that kind of interaction than like, you know, hundreds of whatever. So I feel like this is just a great little like experiment that I'm really, really enjoying.
Me too.
So on that note, where are we going with this bullshit, man?
Yeah. So what should we do? What should we do for what should next shows be about?
So one thing that's interesting is, I actually took this out, but I've been building another level of the show. There's two things that number one is we can guns, of course.
Yep.
I think we should bring a third box in, which will give us the ability to interview people. So
this is good.
So I thought we could try really easily. There's a couple of people that we've already talked about. One would possibly be Dave
Sirotkin, yeah.
Yeah, and Dave just is like another father, another guy, another comedian type who is also a musician, and I think he would just fit in really with our.
Yeah,
our
I think he would have a good perspective, especially him being he has older kids, a little bit older kids.
He does, yeah, and he's also a creative, and he's doing this crap, and he also knows an awful lot about wrestling. For example,
he does.
He also both you and him have Cosby impressions, so I mean that might be.
Yeah, we do. We have dueled Cosby before in the past, and I feel like now we could do that, and maybe we might get sent to prison because.
Well, then let's try that. Let's try to.
Yeah. Let's try for incarceration. Why not?
That sounds good, and then aside from that, I like the that we brought Filmmation into the table. It sounds like we have a lot more that we want to talk about in terms.
Yeah,
of...
Filmmation is something that I think we can come back to, because I mean, like you could spend all the time just talking about He-Man, spend all the time talking about the Star Trek. Episodes.
I mean, and I think maybe we should start figuring out, hey, maybe there is one thing that we can analyze, and then you could talk about the voice acting and then the character development and whatever, and I could like say, oh, hey, and this is how they built the show and how they did it, because really there's a lot of, I mean, it doesn't look that innovative now, right, when you look back on it, but when you think about what animation was before, it was really fluid, and they spent all this work, and then these guys just like optimized the shit out of it in order to make stories, and there's all kinds of stuff that we could talk about that. So maybe we'll come back and we'll like choose a single show from Filmmation or something, or
that would work. Should we let's see, what should we talk about next week? We've sort of
did mobile phones, and we did Filmmation, which were a couple of big ones that we were interested in, and then do we have anything else that was on the document?
Well, should we? I was thinking about movies that have become TV shows and TV shows that have become.
It's interesting, or maybe just the general decay of like the recycled bullshit that's coming out in this town.
Right, and like, and I am also sort of like Nye's always very positive about stuff, and I feel like I'm usually the one who's just like just holding the weight down, just sort of pulling, you know, the sort of entertainment body back under the toilet so that it could just be held under the water.
Yeah, just held there. I mean, when you sit there,
things have gotten so bad in entertainment, right? But yeah, I mean, you know, we could do that, but I feel like we would lose our. Say we have 12 followers.
Yeah, right. Our 12 followers would definitely lose. So then maybe we do something.
Yeah, we
positive.
would lose them. So
let's move forward into the positive. So if anybody has any ideas of shows that we should do, maybe we should ask our 12 followers what we should do. So I'll post on Facebook for suggestions. But
do you want the next one to be about food trucks? I'm sorry.
Well, well, that's our show. Let's end on that one. We'll be back here at 9:30 next week. We'll definitely have future things to look forward to. Our music is done by Jen Remington. At heydog.com. And that was our show. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for showing up, guys. Be here or be square next week. Same time, same
dad channel.
Yep.
All right. Take care.